Hi, welcome to the podcast, Amber.
Hello, thank you.
You're very welcome. The question I love to ask every guest is, who do you say you are?
So that's a tough question because if we want to go off of titles, I have a lot of different little titles. Um, I would consider myself right now as a caretaker because my husband's friend, November 1st of 2021, she had a double lung transplant and she lives with us. So I've been helping her out. Um, Also now, as of also November 1st, I am now a homeowner. So that comes along with a whole bunch of different problems within its own self. I consider myself a prepper. And with me being a prepper, that started from me first moving to Houston, because now I reside in Texas. And that year that my husband deployed, because he's in the military, that was the year that Hurricane Harvey happened. It was just me and my 8-pound dog. I was working hospitality at the time, luckily, because then I was able to just go to my job and stay at my job.
Yeah.
But that was very hectic. And then he was gone for 18 months, came back home for about a year. The pandemic happened. So right there, a lot of people want to figure out what's going on and how to operate in life. And that's when I started gardening. But then he also had to deploy again. And when he deployed for that time, the Texas freeze happened in February. So with everything, right, with everything going on, and most of the time me being by myself when some type of natural disaster happened, it made me realize that I can't just prepare just because I am uh, solo at the time because I'm married, but I'm solo because I'm physically living by myself or, with other people.
Right.
Um, Also have to prepare for natural and man-made disasters. So with all that being said, that's when I started gardening. I started learning different techniques on how to store and collect rainwater, because here in Texas it's legal to collect rainwater and actually use it, but I only use that water for my gardening purposes. So instead of using the hose and bringing up my water bill, I'll just collect it from the roof and attach it to the gutters and then use that for my garden. But I have to set that up because, like I said, moved to a new spot. So
Yeah.
the that I had is no longer here, but it's also no longer here because of the Texas freeze. It just kind of got rid of everything. Um, Another thing, I'm a wife and I'm an army wife at that. So there's certain events that normal people don't necessarily go to that I would go to, pertaining to military events. So those are all my different titles right now. Well, and then I was doing modeling for a little bit, and and then also I was doing what I consider just artistic expression, which was in the form of rapping. So, like I said, lots of different
Okay.
hats,
Just show off with your bad self then.
lots of little different hats that I put on. But my main focus right now is preparing, and it's to kind of help what I would say, like, not necessarily single parents, but more of minorities, helping them prepare for man-made and natural disasters on a budget. And what I'm working on right now is a list of 125 things that you can buy from the dollar store. And the reason why it's 125 is because now they increased the Dollar Tree's price to $1.25. So with them getting an extra quarter in,
Yeah,
that's extra 25 on the list.
I like
So
that.
that should be coming up soon, because there's like little things that you can do that people never thought of. So
Mhm.
like to start a fire, you can do that in less than $5 at the Dollar Tree. All you need is cotton ball, Vaseline, and a lighter. And because of the petroleum jelly and the Vaseline, it will just stay ignited and it's very hard to snuff out.
Man, I wish I knew that this time last year, going back camping for the first time in a while. And it's like you're sitting
Um,
there trying to start a fire, but of course, like they had this thing where since you really call it glamping, not real camping, but
Mm.
like they had this box where they had the firewood in there and the kindling, but it's like if you're not used to going camping or that type of thing, you could just be out there like, oh, maybe you just throw the logs on there. And it's like, no, just pull up YouTube. You do have service, but like the point of going out there was to disconnect a bit, but it's like just keep it simple. Just put two logs parallel and two logs perpendicular on top of them, and then put the kindling in the bottom, and then just make sure that you're feeding the fire so that the wood will catch. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. I didn't need to make like a TP and do all these
Mhm.
other things and make it
That's
complicated. But how did you get into like the prepping, and like how did like your viewpoint on that change from actually being able to physically do it, and then when those man-made events happen, or the natural disasters like the freeze happen, like how did you have to respond with like, okay, I've been preparing for this and now I've actually got to do something with it.
So the way that that started was mostly, like I said, because of things happening. I was like, okay, I need to somewhat be prepared. So, like for Hurricane Harvey, you didn't want to use the water supply because everything was flooded, so you're not sure how contaminated the water actually is. And with that being said, my husband and I were actually uh, distributors for alkaline water. So because of that, we always have a whole bunch of just water bottles everywhere
Right.
in the house, and we have usually about like a pallet at a time in the house. So with that being said, you don't necessarily have to worry that much. But that's only for water. Now it's like, oh, okay, well, for Hurricane Harvey, people's houses are getting flooded. The neighborhoods, there's people who don't have electricity, and that was same thing with the Texas freeze. And luckily, I was born and raised in New York, and I still go to New York usually once a year around Christmas time. So because of that, I still had my winter gear. Thank God that I still had my winter gear because um, we had electricity and we had water the first 2 days. We had water. And then the friend that I ended up taking care of, and she lives with me now, she didn't live with me at the time. And she said, hey, Amber, for some reason, my phone isn't working everywhere. And I was like, what do you mean it's not working everywhere? So I guess the satellites or the towers, it wasn't getting to long distance. So she was like, can you do me a favor and call a hotel so I can stay there? Because she was on 24-hour oxygen. And
Mm,
she electricity. I said, or you can just drive to my house. Like
right,
I have
right.
a room. You don't have to go to a hotel. And she was like, say less. And I said, yeah, because we have water, we have electricity. Don't worry about it. That day that she came is when I was like, Mom, because my mom ended up moving down here. I said, Mom, the water pressure is low. And she said, what? And I was like, yeah, the water pressure seems low. She's like, they're turning off our water. She's like, fill up everything. And I was like, what? So we have the 5 gallon jugs because we have the water machine too. So we have the 5 gallon jugs. We filled all those up. We
Mhm.
had different just like gallon jugs. We filled all of those up, and we ended up using those gallon jugs to flush the toilet. I did. That's when I realized it takes about a gallon to 2 gallons to flush a toilet. And it was like, goodness. So we were trying to figure out, because I lived in a 2-story house, we were trying to figure out what's best. Should we use the bathroom upstairs and the gravity will push it down better, or use the one on the bottom floor and just use that one? And so we had that. And then I also had a 5 gallon bucket that has the spigot, the little spigot to it,
Mhm.
what we were using to wash our hands, the little
Mm.
spigot.
Gotcha.
Um, we also always make sure that we just have paper plates and plastic silverware. We
Mhm.
just do that because usually our house was kind of like the gathering place.
Mhm.
And so people had, brought extra utensils and stuff like that. They'll just keep it. Same thing with like alcohol and stuff. We'll just keep it at our house. And then the next event, we'll have it there. So we had those, and we used that when we were trying to eat. That way we did not use water to try to wash dishes.
Makes sense.
So there was a whole bunch of different little things that we were trying to do. An example was to keep the heat in the house. So a
Mm.
lot of people don't know this, but we had our living room in the back, and the back area has the back, just the back door to the outside elements. And that's when I realized we have a draft. I feel everything. So what I did was I took a comforter and put it where the door was and just duct taped it to that doorway. That way it'll keep everything, all that coldness was just staying on the comforter and it wasn't actually seeping into the house.
Yeah.
And our neighbor across the street, she just cut down a tree and we had a wood burning fireplace. I took my wheelbarrow from my garden, went across the street. However, I had to kind of like break it with my foot, like stand on it and kind of break it
Hmm.
because it was also solid ice on
Mm.
the wood. And I would just put the wheelbarrow in the garage, have as many pieces of wood as I possibly can,
Hmm.
and did not have an electric saw, so I had to do everything with a handsaw. Arms were killing me, but I had a little bit of muscle after that because
Yeah.
for us, the Texas freeze in my house at least, it lasted a week. And three of my neighbors, their pipes bursted.
Hmm.
And the same with the neighbor that I was getting the wood from. And she had a baby and
Mm.
it was formula, a certain type of formula. And I was like, would so I gave her a pallet of, or not a pallet, but a 24 pack of water. And she was like, are you sure? I was like, yeah, because I've been using your wood. She's like, well, I can't use the wood. I was like, but I'm using the wood. So
Right.
this is a trade off. I was like, you may not see it that way, but I'm trading you your wood for some water. And then she was just like, oh, thank you so much. And when Walmart opened, I tried to go there that first day because I heard that it opened. My goodness, it was a madhouse. But everything, what was interesting was I saw people with shopping carts and they were trying to get like frozen pizzas and stuff. And I'm like, why would you do that? It's like certain people don't even have electricity, and you're not
Hmm.
sure if you're not going to have electricity soon.
Right.
And then some of them, they couldn't even get the frozen pizzas because there were certain places that didn't have electricity, like certain grocery stores and stuff that didn't have electricity. So all of their frozen goods, all of their refrigerated goods were all gone. But me personally speaking, I would think, hey, for you to not just waste it, just put it in a shopping cart, put it outside because it's going to freeze because it was already cold outside.
Right.
But,
Right. But
you know,
yeah,
it's
I guess to your point, it's like unless you unless you've already had that experience, you like you're not thinking rationally if you haven't done anything to kind of prepare yourself for like when all hell breaks loose. You're not thinking like, let me do these rational things I've never practiced before.
right. And that's why I've been like planning for us in this household now to do like drills. So it'll be like, oh, okay, one day we're not going to use any electricity. We're just not. And luckily now I'm just like, I feel blessed that we have a gas stove. So worst case scenario, you'll hear the ticking and then I'll just take the extender, like an extender lighter like this to be able to light my stove. However, we also have a grill and we have a covered patio. So if it's raining or something, we can still actually grill outside, even if it's like super cold or something. I also, after the Texas freeze, I bought myself a solar powered generator. And I'm like, I'm in Texas. It make no sense to not buy one.
Right.
With the sun and stuff like that, I feel like it's just common sense.
Yeah.
Um, and the thing is, like, it was an investment, but it was a $300 investment. And I know that we always have hurricane season. It's almost like once a year there's something bad that happens. And I can say that because 2 weeks ago we had a thunderstorm. 2 weeks ago there was 188,000 Houstonians that did not have electricity from the thunderstorm. A th-
188,000.
from a thunderstorm. And it's like oh, well, we have thunderstorms in New York all the time and stuff like that. And that was another thing. A lot of my New York family and friends did not check on me during the storm. Granted, I was doing live videos and little stories on Instagram and Facebook so they can see, but they're like, oh, you're from New York, so we knew you were going to be fine anyways. I said, yes, I'm from New York, and I would be fine if we had the same things that New York had. And they're like, what do you mean? And I was like, we don't have salt trucks. We don't have snowplows. People don't have electricity. People are dying in their garage because they turn their car on, keep the garage door closed, carbon monoxide poisoning.
Right.
And that was another thing. I was like, oh, I don't even think I have a carbon monoxide detector. So that was another thing that I made sure I purchased when I moved to this location because, like I said, gas stove and a gas fireplace. There could be a leak and I'm sleeping and not never know about it. So I bought those things. Another thing that I'm just now realizing is that I don't have a fire extinguisher. I have I have fire detectors, but not an
Right.
extinguisher. And the thing is, like, another thing that people, when they panic, if they have a grease fire, what do they automatically do? They go to water.
Right.
You don't, you don't, you know, you learn in cooking class and stuff like that, water and, you know, oils don't mix.
Right.
So you shouldn't do that. You should take flour to get it off. But, you know, when you're rushing and something
Mm.
happens, you're not going to think, where's the flour? You're
Yeah.
just going to be like,
Right.
let
Let
me,
me just get the closest thing to get it out to
and that's
get
really
deal
exciting.
with it. Man, you're hitting on so many key things because I think a big thing that's like I'm so glad you brought this up because outside of hearing about the the Texas freeze or just like even trying to imagine what how many people that affected and how many people it continues to affect because it's like you have these disasters happen and a lot of times it's easy to forget like unless you personally know someone that was there or unless you went through it you've got your own issues so to speak or life to deal with but I think one of the key things you really kind of pointed out is that a lot of the things you have in certain environments, there's reasons those things are there. And it's for cases like this, and you putting together like the 125 things you can get from a dollar store. Because where I'm at now in South Georgia, it's like there are dollar stores popping up almost everywhere. And on the one aspect, I kind of see the food that they have and don't have, like you're not going to get produce from a dollar store. But I'm like, okay, now I know I can get these essential things according to Amber for like just typical things. It's like you knew how to get the firewood. And like when you say New York, were you in like New York City, New York, or were you like outskirts or like how did you do outdoor things being like a New York City lady?
Right. So I was born in Harlem. I was born in New York City. However, I left. We left when I was 5, and we went to the capital region, which is Albany. And then growing up and going to middle school and high school, we moved even further up north to the Adirondack Mountains. So with that, that was like ski lodge type of outdoors mountain, always having snow, where it's like, oh, okay, we have a lot of snow. That
Mhm.
doesn't mean snow day because you're going to, you know. And then I went to college in Buffalo. So then I went from mountain snow to lake effect snow. So
Ooh.
it, yeah, so
What
it was
what's the difference real quick because I grew up in Georgia and we rarely get snow. If we get like half an inch of snow, the whole city shuts down. Like Atlanta shut down in 2010, I think maybe 2013, a couple other times since then. Like people don't know, so you gotta you gotta slow it down a little bit.
right. So the I would say more that the mountain snow is more of a dry kind of crisp feel to it,
Hmm.
where like the wind hurts your face.
Mm.
Like, because the thing is, it can be cold outside and it can be below 0 degrees, and you'll be
Hmm.
perfectly fine. But when the wind chill comes with it, just think of all that coldness, and then it's a little wet hitting your face.
That's what it
It's
feels like in Chicago walking around those the skyscrapers and things like that. It just
yeah.
tornadoes through there and just comes whipping around the corners.
And that's kind of how it is in Buffalo, but it's more, I feel like if you're not used to the altitude of being in the mountains or going from mountain to valley, which is where I was living at before when I was in high school, versus in college of the lake effect snow, which is where it's more wet because of Niagara Falls. But the first year I was in college, they were like, oh, we get a lot of snow. Don't think you're going to have a snow day because it's just not a thing. We had 6 feet of snow and we had a snow day. And that
It's
was because
different.
the buses couldn't get to us. Like, how are you going to go to school if you can't get to school? Like, so there's those things. So that's why when it came to the Texas freeze, it was interesting because I'm trying to figure out like how to describe it towards the other two, places that I was at. I had gloves on, but when I took off my gloves, they were like, my fingers were still kind of frozen. They were cold. So I couldn't automatically start to saw and cut the wood. I had to go inside the house because we already had a little bit of twigs and logs. I forgot to say it. The week before the Texas freeze, they were talking about how it was going to be cold, a cold front. That's what they called it. A cold front is coming. So I said, I'm also a couponer. I'm very frugal. And I went on Facebook Marketplace and I said, hey, who has free firewood? And there was a guy who said, hey, I just cut down a tree in my front yard. If you want it, come and get it. So I took which vehicle did I take? I think I took my SUV. So I took the Kia Sorento and I brought my friend with me. I was like, hey, what are you doing? She was like, nothing. I said, come with me because you're going to help me get some wood and put it in the trunk. She was like, what? I was like, that's all I need it for. She was just like, okay. And she was like, wait, so we're going to use the fireplace today? I said, you want to make s'mores? so I kind of bribed her to help me get the wood so we can make s'mores.
Nice.
But luckily, that's what we were able to start our fires with, that wood that I got the week previously. And you have to, when it's fresh wood like that from a tree that was still alive, it usually takes about a week or so for it to really ignite. And that's because it's still living. It's not
Right.
dry where it can really catch. So it still has, some liquid kind of to it. So because, like I said, it was in the garage, it was still hot outside. So it's just heating up in the garage. And then after it heated up for like 2 or 3 days, then I put it in my house right next to the fireplace where we have like a log area. But luckily, like I said, I just planned ahead and I was like, oh, a cold front, it's an excuse for me to use my fireplace. That's
I
how
like it.
just as, a little like, oh, it's a cold front. Let's warm up and toasty near the fireplace. I'm not thinking everybody's going to be bundled up in comforters, when we're like trying to play like survival of the fittest with the fireplace. But
Right.
that's what happened. And then I had 2 dogs. I had my little 8-pound dog, and then I have a pit bull. So he was like in the front with us and in the back because we had the back living room and then like the front sitting area. I was in the back living room because that's where the fireplace was. So we were literally there like all day and just trying to like keep all the body heat, in that back area. And we had kind of like little French doors that separated the front area from the back area. So we had that closed and I would put a comforter over that too to keep as much of the heat in that little area as possible. But also just quick tip, in New York, what we usually do in the wintertime is we would tape up, what do you call it, like kind of like saran wrap, basically like plastic wrap around the windows, and we would tape it up and then you take a blow dryer to kind of shrink it so then it can stay tight. And then that's usually stays there all winter long because are you going to open up the window in the winter in New York? No, you're not. So it
Right.
didn't matter. But in Texas, you're not going to do that if it's only going to be like that for a week and then you're going to rip it off or something. But for people who live upstate, in the northern areas, you can do that. I'm not sure if everybody knows that, but that's what we used to do.
Gotcha. Man, that's awesome. So it's like from the time you moved from New York to Texas, like what period of time was that before like the freeze happened and everything like that kind of kicked off?
So I moved, the first day I moved here was June 1st of 2016. And 2017, Hurricane Harvey happened. So I was only here for a year. And my mom, she didn't live with me at the time. She was still in New York. She was like, hey, they're talking about this big hurricane's coming. I want you to stay at your job. And I was like, for what? And she was like, because there's a hurricane coming. I was like, I don't think it's going to be a big deal because I have concert tickets to see Mary J. Blige and she didn't cancel. She was like, Maroon 5 canceled. I said, that's Maroon 5. Mary J said she's still going to come. I was like, Mary doesn't think it's a big deal, so it's not a big deal. And she canceled. She definitely canceled. So I was like, okay. She was like, I don't know, Amber, I'm just having this gut feeling that you should probably go to work, and I'm like, I don't want to be stuck at work, like it's like, let alone I'm a supervisor. So it's like they're going to see me, especially when you're staying there. Like if you're staying where you work, people don't necessarily know when you're on the clock or off the clock. They just remember your
Right.
face. And
Right.
so it's like,
Right.
can you help me with such and such? And then with something like Hurricane Harvey, I'm not going to be like, no, I'm off the clock. I'm going to my room and then just leave them. And it was like a lot of people couldn't make it to work. And one of the other supervisors, he showed me a video of his street, and there was people in canoes in the street, canoes or kayaks in the street, because we don't know where the street is.
Yeah.
Downtown Houston, the water was up to the street lights, not the stop sign, the street lights,
Right.
all the way up. So, and also like if you can think of like how on highways they have the median, and sometimes like the median is real high up, like you can't even see the cars on the other side that's going the opposite direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
You would have to walk on that, and there was only about, I would say, a half a foot, like 6 inches
Mm.
space of water between you walking on there.
Mm-hmm.
And I, like, part of that time I tried to drive back home just to see, because I wanted to check on everything.
Mm-hmm.
The what was it, the day before I went to go to my job, I tried to bring all the electronic devices upstairs because I lived in a townhome.
Mm-hmm.
Was like, okay, the TV, the PlayStation, I'll try to bring that upstairs. I was like, my couch, I bought
Mm-hmm.
that for $2 at Chinatown, I'll be okay.
Yeah.
Like little
Just
things
get
I
the
was like,
essentials.
yes, like let me bring these things that are super expensive up the stairs, and hopefully they'll survive, because there were
Mm-hmm.
some people who actually had to break through their roof to get out of their house. There was people who try to make fun of the situation, that lived, in the situation, and they were like, look, we're going fishing in our living room, and they were sitting on the couch because it was floating, and
Yeah.
there was actually fish in their house.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's real.
And like I said, and I know it from experience, there
Mm-hmm.
was this one person that I was able to help her get some clothes and stuff like that, because some friends and family donated clothes and they sent it in a pallet. And she was looking for her brother. And sadly, he passed in Hurricane Harvey. And they found his body somewhere where it wasn't close to his house. So there was a lot going on. And I was blessed to say that I didn't even see the half of it because I was at my job.
Yeah.
While there were some hotels that had to evacuate because the hotels got flooded.
Mm. I guess, do you remember why your mom was insisting for you to be at your job? Like, is it on a higher elevation or like just fortified?
She literally just said she had a feeling that something bad was going to happen.
Mm.
And she has like an intuition,
Mm-hmm.
like she'll say like, something's telling me that such and such going to happen. I don't know why. And I'll be like, whenever she says something's telling me, I just automatically listen. I'm just like, okay, I'll take your word for it. I'll just go and do what you asked me to. And like I said, luckily nothing happened at my house or at my townhome. However, I did find out that the electricity was off. So I would have been there and I would have been stuck because I did try to go to my house to see. And I think I made it halfway there before I saw cars floating.
Yeah.
And when I turned around, because
Yeah.
I'm like,
That's a
there's,
that's a clear sign of nope, that's not happening today.
I'm like, if I see cars floating,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna make it. I mean, granted, yes, I'm in an SUV, but I'm not gonna take that chance. Like, why take
Mm.
that chance if I see cars floating?
Right.
No.
Right.
So luckily there was, yet again, my favorite place, a Dollar Tree was open, and they had electricity. So I called some of my coworkers that were staying at the hotel and I was like, what's the snack from the Dollar Tree that you want? They're like, you're at the store? And I was like, I said, yes, I wanted to check to see if my house was okay. So I was like, I went to the store. They're like, the store is open? I was like, for now. So just tell me what you want. Just give me a list. Just tell me right now. So then I'm grabbing like a whole bunch of chips and certain drinks and beverages and stuff like that for everybody. And like I said, luckily their refrigerators were working. So I was able to get like little beef patties and chimichangas and stuff like that. And, you know, we had a blast because I invited everybody to my room. We used my microwave, you know, and it's like, it's crazy to think about the little things like that that seems important to you when you're in a dire strait need. You know, like you're not thinking of, I barely thought of my cell phone at the time,
Mm.
except to make little stories to warn people, hey, this is a real thing, or this is how it's looking, at least where I'm at, or
Mm.
just to let family know that I'm okay. Because
Right.
if I do it that way, they're going to blow up my mom's phone and
Mm.
then make mom worry more.
Right.
Let me just do it this way. That way everybody knows and everybody sees what's going on. Um, but the one thing that really made Hurricane Harvey, personally speaking, worse than it needed to be is because they had to open the levee.
Mm.
Because if they didn't, it was going to break, and that would have been even worse than if they opened it up. So because they opened the levee, it flooded other areas that normally wouldn't have flooded.
Gotcha. It's interesting with, like you mentioned, them having to make that decision. It's something that started to cross my mind as you were talking about it because like back 2014, 2015, I was in around the Texas Houston area. I think I became a resident of Texas because I was there for more than a month.
Uh,
And it was just because like I was supposed to do a training for 2 weeks, but 2 weeks turned into a month and a half because I guess TSA was TSA. But anyways, um, just being in the city and seeing like how lively it is. But then after being there for about a month or so, and I was in Louisiana before, and then I went back and stayed there for about a month, and seeing just like how people maybe feel about themselves or how they go about life. I was like, I don't think it's just people, but it might be like the environment and things that they've had to go through, like Hurricane Katrina. And you just see like the damage is there. If I'm talking 2014, that's like 7 years, at least 7 years after the fact. And like those effects are still felt. And it's like, just try not to take it personal if somebody just hates life because it's like, I didn't necessarily do anything to them, but life may have, and that's just something you have to see as a byproduct. And unfortunately, like I think they rebuilt the levees around the New Orleans area is like a big thing, but like if somebody's not there to make the decisions, like it can be as bad as it was, and then you still have the bad effects that happen as a result. But I think to your point, and part of the reason like I wanted to talk to you, but part of the reason I do the podcast is really to like touch on those small things that people don't see. And also living in a rural area like I do now, it's really having an appreciation for people that do the hard things no one really sees, but trying to like shine a little light on it and be like, this is why people live off the land. It's not always a thing of a mistrust, but it's like, hey, when life happens, sometimes you have to really depend on yourself. And like if you're ill equipped and you're like, I've got this job, I've got this money, I've got this status, but it's like if you're waiting in a pool of water and you got nowhere to go, no friends, no resources, no nothing, it's like, hey, you did a good job getting here, but here isn't really going to help you get through the situation you're in. And it's not like a fault or like a condemnation to anybody, but it's like, hey, like everybody brings something different to the table, and it's good to just acknowledge people and not look down on people because they're not on the your level, quote unquote, or just like, oh, like this person, they got dirt all over their clothes, and it's like, yeah, that's a millionaire over there. He's got dirt on his clothes because he's been like working this, or he's been fixing your $1,000 car you don't know anything about, or just like whatever it is. But it's, I feel, I guess I'm not trying to like pit people against each other, but I I really appreciate what you're sharing about your story and kind of the things that you've been able to overcome through this, and just being able to not just experience it, but get through it. And now on the backside of it, look to kind of jot down those lessons and share them with other people to let them know, like, okay, hey, here's something you can do about where you're at. It's like, it's not just life sucks. Let me fold my hands and just be like, oh, just, we'll just whatever. Like the planet's going to end. It's like,
Yeah.
where does that get you at the end of the day if that's just the synopsis and it's I'm gonna fold my hands and I'm not gonna do anything about it?
Right, because it's not, it's, you're not living that's living like on autopilot, like whatever is going to happen. It's
Yeah.
out of my now. To an extent, it's out of your hands, but you
Mm.
can still do something about it.
Right.
Like, for example, a lot of people are like, well, I can't buy a solar power generator. I'm not telling you to buy a solar power generator right now, but what you can do is you can also take um a terracotta pot that has, you know, the little circle in the end. You can
Yeah.
take that. You can take a tea lamp, which is the little tiny ones, the little disc ones, put that underneath the terracotta, put the terracotta pot on top of it, and that's going to be a little hand heater.
Wow.
And why? Because the terracotta pot is clay, so it's going to absorb that heat from the little tea light that you have, because that's how it's made. It's made off of heat and stuff and fire. So you can just put your hand right around it and you'll be good to go. So it's like you can still do little things that will help you out in some way, shape, or form in the long run. Like, for example, it's like, do you have a flashlight? Oh, yeah, I have a flashlight. Okay, do you have batteries? Yeah, I have batteries. Okay, if I told you to get that right now, do you know where it's at?
The little things.
You know what I mean? Like, well, I know I have one, yes, but in a dire straight need, if your batteries are all the way over here and your flashlight is all the way over there, and you know it's on those two different spots of your house, but you're not sure exactly where it's at, how good is it for you? So it's like you need to practice these little things. And a lot of people, the reason why I'm doing the Dollar Tree one is because a lot of people say that they don't have the funds for it. A lot of people that I want to reach out to, they don't have the funds for it. And that's just like with Hurricane Harvey, a lot of people whose houses got demolished, they didn't have the funds for it. And the thing is, a lot of people with Hurricane Harvey, they contacted FEMA, their insurance and stuff like that. Some of those people never got the money back for their homes. And I know because they stayed at my hotel,
Mm.
you know, and some of them I kept in contact with and stuff. But it's just like, yeah, we got to move on and stuff like that. Yeah, I spent, you know, how many years working at this job to get this home that, you know, was my dream home. And, you know, I was content, I was satisfied, and now it's all gone, you know, and I'm not saying that that can't happen to me too,
Right.
but, you know, like I do certain things to make myself content with worst case scenarios. So it's more like I prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And I open my doors to family and friends who are in need during those times so they can come and be somewhere where they may consider somewhat safe from the elements. And with that, that's why I really want to make sure that I teach people that just because you only make this amount of money doesn't mean that you can't somewhat prepare. Just because you're a single parent doesn't mean that you can't prepare. Just because you work all these extra hours doesn't mean that you can't somewhat prepare. Like usually there's two ways that you can prepare. You can either prepare using your time or you can prepare using your money. Whichever one you have more available, that's going to be the way that you'll be able to do it. So no matter what situation you're in, you can learn how to do it. Like I learned how to make my own laundry detergent. Um, and I did that for just to experiment with it, just to
Mm-hmm.
find out. I found out how to make stain removers. I found out how to clean my oven real well with just baking soda and vinegar, and that's it. How much really is baking soda? How much really is vinegar?
Yeah.
It doesn't cost you that much to be able to do little things like that. And the reason why I've been sticking with the baking soda and the vinegar is because that has multiple purposes. You don't just use it just to clean that area, but I can also use it if I wanted to take the cucumbers that I got from the farmer's market and make pickles because you use vinegar and salt.
Yeah.
I can use the baking soda for doggone near anything. you know, I can bake with the baking soda, or I can,
Right.
use it for also using it for powdered laundry detergent. So I know how
Mm.
to make powdered laundry detergent now and liquid laundry detergent. A lot of people questioned the way that me and my husband decided to live because I'm only 30, but I am a housewife, but I'm a housewife without kids. So a lot of people question that, like, yeah, I know of housewives that have children, a stay at home mom, but not just a housewife. And I was like, well, because the thing is, he believes in the prepping. He believes that, hey, we do need to prepare for when stuff hits the fan, type of situation. And I think he believes that even more because he's in the military.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm not saying he knows things that I don't know. I
Mm.
believe he knows things that I don't know,
Yeah.
with certain security clearances that he has and stuff. And he'll just be like, hey, make sure we have this amount of such and such by such and such day. I
Mm.
don't ask him why. I just do it.
Yeah.
Sometimes certain things seems a little iffy and happens. Sometimes nothing ever happens. Like for
Mm.
example, George Floyd, there was the downtown Houston. A lot of people were marching downtown Houston. However, some of it wasn't friendly, peaceful marching. Some of it was. He was like, don't go. Make sure you stay home. And then I was like, okay. And then he was like, because they may send the military out. When they send the police out, they're beanbag bullets. When they send
Right.
the military out, they're not beanbag bullets.
Mm.
So I was like, okay, I will stay home. But luckily the military didn't really have to go. It was pretty decent compared to the rest of the world. But it's situations like that where we do a lot of teamwork. Like he's very on me right now about starting the garden back up again. And I'm like, man, but spring, summer's gone, it's going to be a fall harvest. And he's like, that's fine, but it will
Yeah.
be something. Something is
Mm-hmm.
better than. So I was
Yeah.
like, okay. I'm like, well, let me just at least start with the herbs, fresh herbs. I put on my Life Prepared Facebook that there's 10 herbs that you can grow with water only. Because that's another thing. People are like, well, I don't have soil, I need
Mm-hmm.
pots and this and I need that. You can grow 10 herbs with just water.
Yeah.
Everybody has water. Yeah, you can use the tap water. It's not saying it has to be like pure alkaline bottled water. No, just
Right.
use
Right.
you can use the tap water. If you got a bucket and you still don't want to trust the water that's there, get a
Mm-hmm.
bucket up when it's raining.
Yeah.
Use the rain water if you want to, but
I know.
basil. And,
Yeah. I
it's
guess what are some of those?
there's basil,
Hmm.
there's thyme, there's green onions, aka
Hmm.
scallions, uh, spearmint,
Hmm.
there's regular mint, and then I can't remember the other five, but I do have it on my Facebook page for that.
I like it.
So there's like little things that like when I find it, I
Hmm.
automatically just send it out. So then
Yeah.
everybody do. I try to share as much as possible. I get my ups and downs where just life and I'm just depressed and I don't, post anything. But
Hmm.
then I'm okay, people, I'm back. you know, I'm like, I'm back and I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
My favorite thing isn't like rise and shine now. I usually do like rise and grind,
Hmm.
because always grind time, especially when it's preparing for natural man-made disasters.
Hmm.
I would say that preparing is not a destination, it's a journey
Hmm.
because never know what's going to happen. Like you can prepare all you want, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be ready for everything that happens, which is okay. That's just like you preparing for a test and you're like, I studied so hard, but I only got 85. I expected 100. It You passed.
Right.
you know,
That's the important thing.
right. But some people will really be upset, like I should have gotten 100. And it's like, I understand, but you didn't, but you passed. So let's move on and learn from our mistakes. And that's really what preparing is all about. It's like, okay, you either put yourself in a situation or you end up becoming in a situation and you learn from your mistakes with that. And that's how you can grow and know where your shortcomings are. And one of the things that I realized during the which one was it? The Texas freeze. So what I learned was um, that I need to have a extra can opener because my can opener broke. And I had to do old fashioned with the knife and try to,
Oh,
open it up. So I
oh
was like,
no.
exactly. And can openers are not that expensive. So it's like, just have an extra one. Don't have
Mm,
an extra electric one
mm,
unless it's battery operated, then yes. But like I said, Texas here, we have a lot of blackouts.
mm.
Don't know why, but that's what happens.
Yeah.
So don't always depend on something that you can plug in.
Mm,
Get that annual wind up one. Or if you have arthritis, I know some people, they can't really with their hands to turn it. They
mm.
have can openers that are electric and battery operated. Just
Right.
make sure you have extra batteries.
Yeah.
Like, because if you don't, and then you open it up and like, oh, it combusted in there and you
Mm,
don't have extra battery. Like I said, and that's another thing that you can at least start off at the Dollar Tree.
yeah.
Dollar Tree is AA, AAA, C, D batteries.
Right. Right.
Start off with those. Yes, I prefer Duracell,
Mm,
but I'm going to still get those Dollar Tree ones. And the reason why I do that is because sometimes, like I said, some of my neighbors at where I used to live, not necessarily here, but they
mm.
knew that sometimes I had extra of certain things. And when it was a disaster or something like that, hey, do you have any batteries? I'm not going to give them my Duracell, but I'll give them my Dollar Tree ones.
Right.
But a moment in time, do they care if it's Duracell, Energizer, Dollar Tree? They don't. They just need batteries. They just need something that's going to help make their things work.
Right.
And then
Right.
usually, so I'll do that. And then there'll be a day where one of my neighbors were like, hey, I was mowing my yard and I saw that your grass wasn't cut, so I cut your grass too. Thank you. Like now I
Right.
don't have to pay for the yard man to do it for me, but and that's how we kind of barter. I need to get more in touch with the people here so then I can do stuff like that too here. But that's how it was. And I will say that we really did bond after that Texas freeze.
That,
It's weird that how disasters
yeah.
sometimes bring you closer to people, but as a community and stuff like that, once you get together, not everybody has the same thing, but that's usually a good thing, because then everyone can help each other out. And that's what I want people to also remember, to have a sense of community and people who are somewhat close, That way, during a natural disaster or something like that, they can help you out. And that's why I also like another thing that I want to make sure that my family and my household has is what's considered a bug out bag. And that's basically a get up and go bag that already has everything in there that you need.
Right, right,
That way, you know, like, oh, okay, they're telling us to evacuate the area because most likely it's going to flood. Okay, well, okay, you have your vitamins, your medication in there already. You have a change of clothes in there. You have some of your personal snacks that you need. You have copies of important documents in there. And oh, and when you put important documents in your bag, what I do is I put those important documents, I fold it up and put it in a Ziploc bag. And I do that way if my bag gets wet, my documents aren't going to get wet. So
right. And
just like
I
little
I love
things.
it. Right. It's it's the little things. It's like it doesn't have to always be this. And even when you say like you have a list of 125 things, it's like you don't have to go out and get all 125. If you get one thing a week, one is more than zero. And it's like we accumulate things over time. And I learned this very quickly because like in the time that I went to Louisiana and Texas for that first time in a while, it was like we were on a training program that for 2 years you're expected to move around every 6 months in a different part of the country or a different part of the world. So at the time when our work was mostly outside of the US, you do more foreign travel. But at the time that I was doing it, it was more domestic. So we were moving around the states. So that's why I went Louisiana, Texas, Louisiana, Illinois, Georgia. And it was like for other people, they went Saudi Arabia. Some people went to um, some people went up north to like Pennsylvania or something like that. But the whole thing was like just travel light. And like some people slept on an air mattress for 2 years. And I tried it for a month or so. I got a hole in the air mattress and I was like, well, that's not gonna work. So I was like, let me do the next best thing and get like the sleep number because it breaks down and it has like this Lego pattern basically. You put the frame together and then you put the plates on top of it and then it's essentially an air mattress that you're sleeping on. And I just realized I've had it for 2014. I got it. So now, yeah, I've had it 8 years and it's been pretty good. Maybe I stored it like for a short period of time, but I was like, oh wow, I guess I have had this thing for a while. And it was again that investment, which like right out of college, you just start making money. And I'm like, oh, okay, like I know I'm scared to spend like a close to $1,000 on a bed, but like I might need to do this because spending like the 30 bucks on the mattress was cool, but I don't know what put the hole in this one, and I don't really want to chance that for another night of sleep when we're working 6 days a week, 70-hour weeks. Like there's not a lot. Like you really got to respect your sleep. You got to respect your feet. Like ended up getting orthotics for the first time after like working 4 years on a site and you're constantly running around and walking. And it was like it's always the little things. And you got to be willing to just like start with something and then build up from there. And like quick story, I found out I was very ill prepared when I had I think a flat tire twice, maybe one time just coming around a corner and the road tends to wash out right there on the line where the outside is. So it's like if you veer off just a little bit, like there's a like a pothole that's got a divot like that. So I came around that corner and it popped both of my tires. And I think it also bent the actual, I think the tire is the actual rim, like the frame. So it bent one of those and popped both of them. So luckily I remembered like you're not supposed to jerk the wheel. So you just steer it calmly into like the area that didn't have a drop off. It was mostly flat. So somebody came by, gave me a ride into work, called the tow truck, got it out. And then that's when I figured it's like, okay, like maybe enough repairs for this car, gotta upgrade. So that was
Right.
another like investment, which that's been 6 years with a car. It's worked without issue. But maybe 2 years later, I got a flat tire somehow, and I was like, or no, the first time I was like, "I don't know how to change a tire." But then that's when I figured out, like, in order to change the tire, you gotta be careful of it's self-explanatory more or less, and I'd seen somebody do it, but I didn't know it in the practical sense. Like, I knew how to do it in my mind, but I never physically changed the tire, and that's when I found out the hard way, you don't put the bracket under the door frame, you gotta go in further
Right.
to get the actual frame of the car. Otherwise, you bend that. So I ended
Mhm.
up doing that by mistake. And then the second time around, a few years later, it was like because I got a flat tire and I didn't have like a toolkit. A lot of the guys that I work with in construction, they had those because it's like you're on the road for so much, you never know what's going to happen. And it helps to have like something to patch your tire so that if you can do it there, you can get it to the mechanic shop and then hopefully they can help you out. Or if you can't replace all four of your tires, you got to at least put the spare tire on there. And then it's like, do I have a spare tire? Does it work? Is it even like
No, what
drivable
condition of
on? Right. But
there?
it's like, all these little things, like, you never think about them until they happen, and it's like, that's why I have respect for the people that grew up, um, I wouldn't say necessarily some grew up harder, but some grew up just in different environments where it's like you do certain things because that's what you're taught growing up, and, like, when you do them, it's just like, "Oh, you're just doing
Like,
this because, like, it's second nature," and
with
it's yeah, it's what you do.
that's just like when I got my first tire when I was 19, with my car. It was I was on the highway, well, freeway, whatever you want to call it. And mine's was real bad because I smelt the burning of the tire. And so I was like, what? Because like I'm looking at my radiator while I'm sitting there driving like 70 miles an hour. And luckily that's why everybody was like, you didn't like speed out or nothing. I was like, no, it felt a little janky, but I was just like, okay, I mean, from driving in the snow before, where it hydroplanes and learn how to not swerve, but just kind of
Right.
let it hydroplane and kind of just correct itself again. Because when I was getting my license, my father picked me up from University at Buffalo, and he picked me up in a snowstorm. And he said, "Okay, you're going to drive back." I said, "Excuse me." And he said, "You're going to drive back." And I said,
Yeah.
"I don't have a license." And then he's like, "You have your permit, and I'm a licensed driver, so you're going to drive back." And so, did I want to in a snowstorm, in a blizzard? No, but it taught me a lot. And then by the time we got there, because it took about, I think, if I can remember correctly, it takes like 6 hours or so. So when I finally got back home, I was like, "Dad, did I do good?" And he was like, "I was asleep." And then I was like, "So did I do good?" He was like, "I didn't wake up, so you did perfect."
Nice.
um, and then the time in the summer when I blew out my tire, when I smelt the burning and stuff like that, I pulled over and I called him and I was like, "Hey, I blew my tire." He was like, "Are you in your car?" And then I was
Mhm.
like, "Yeah, why?" He was like, "I drove past you." I said, "What?" I just said, he said, "I'm on my way back." And so I was so and then I was like, "So you're gonna change the tire for me?" And then he was like, "No." And I was like, "What do you mean no?" He's like, "This is your car." He's like, "You're a female, you're by yourself, you're going to have to figure this stuff out." And then I was like, "I'm 19." I'm like, "I'm not gonna remember." And he said, "Oh, you're not gonna remember this? Perfect. I'll record it for you. Go ahead, start." And so he recorded me changing my tire. I still have the video, but he
I love
recorded me
it.
my tire. And that's when I also found out my spare tire was no good. Why? Because I can see the wiring tread in like coming out of the tire. So he was like, "Baby girl, you're just gonna need 4 brand new tires." I said, "Four? Four? Don't say that to me." He was like, well, don't you have a Walmart credit card? And I was like, that's for emergencies. And he was like, aren't you on the side of the road right now? And I was like, but can't I just buy one? And then he was like, you can't buy one tire. He's like, because that's just replacing the one tire that popped. But then you still need the spare tire. And then he's like sitting there explaining. I was like, fine, I'll just get four new tires. So I got four new tires that day. And then I was like, is there any tire on my car that looks decent? And they were like, well, there's one. I said, can you make that my spare? And so they threw away all the rest of them and made that one my spare. But it's funny because coming to Texas, I had a friend who was doing my other friend's hair, and they called me freaking out. Oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. I was like, what is wrong with y'all? We have a flat tire. I was like, I was like, do you now? So you just assume that I know how to fix a flat tire. Well, you know a lot of stuff that's unnecessary. I said, unnecessary? Changing the tire is unnecessary? They're like, can you help me or not? I'm on my way. So like I said, like certain little things like that, my dad prepared me for that. Like he said, he had me take like taekwondo and karate when I was in second grade because he was like, you usually are with your mom, and your mom's a single parent. You're gonna need to learn how to do stuff. I was like, so you want me to protect mom and me? Like he was just like, no. But the thing is, you are an only child, and
Mhm.
like how like there's kids. I'm gonna tell my brother. I'm gonna tell my sister. It's like I don't have anybody to tell, So it's like I need to learn how to defend myself, and not even just from like bullies in school, but it's like nowadays, especially that another thing that I learned with being here in Texas, because we're close to the border, there's a lot of trafficking. And that kind of made me uneasy because I was like, I don't remember my phone going off so many times for Amber Alerts in New York. I just don't recall. And that's a little alarming. And it's like, oh, okay, so if your child is, young, like nowadays, like if I had to take an Uber, I open up the Uber door and I check in the inside to see if the child lock is on. Like, but here's the thing: does everybody do that?
That has never crossed my mind once, but now
Really?
that's in my mind.
Like,
But it's in my mind in a good way because it's like I've seen a couple of things online where people are saying like, "Oh, these are," like I saw somebody saying like they're putting napkins in someone's um
in the arm,
yeah,
like handlebar part, and it's
right,
like
right.
poison on it or something, and it's
Right,
making.
right. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like other people say like, "Oh, people they put zip ties on people's door on like their backside passenger door where they can't see it." And it's like they're marking people that they see as vulnerable to be like, "Okay, we can get that or we can get that." And it's like that's it's not a paranoia thing. It's a thing that you have to keep in the forefront of your mind that there is evil in the world and you cannot be naive to it because when something happens to you naively, people will like to ask like, why would God allow this? And I feel like that's a very twisted question because it's like you're playing on people's emotions and people have this notion that like God doesn't allow evil or just because God is a thing, like nothing should be wrong in the world. And it's like
The fact that
maybe
free
right,
will is there's always going to be something.
right, right.
Just the fact of free will, there's always going to be something. Somebody's going to look out for their best interests, even if it means not your best interests. And
Yeah.
we always keep also that in the front of our minds as well, because everyone's not trustworthy. Somebody may seem real nice to you,
Mm,
and you're out at a bar and somebody puts something in your drink and you didn't realize it. That's why
yeah.
another thought was, once you put down your drink, you're done with it.
Mhm.
And then if somebody tries to be nice and offers you a drink, if you didn't see it come straight from the bartender, like how the bartender, oh, so and so over there just bought this extra drink for you,
Mhm.
don't.
Right.
So it's like there's just but so much that you can really do, which is why you kind of have to just prepare prepare for certain things.
Yeah.
And, and it's like I say, I try not to do what people consider fear mongering. Like they're like, oh, you always talk about doom and gloom. Not necessarily. I talk about things that are kind of like already happening. And I'm like, oh, okay, since this came up, this is a way that you can maybe avoid it or, confront it if it happens to you and you notice it. Call the police, do this, or don't touch it, certain things like that, just for awareness, not so you can be scared of it. Because the thing is, knowledge is power. And another thing is like if you don't know it and then you do something that you don't know legally, like for example, you do something that's illegal, but you didn't know it was illegal. The law doesn't care that you didn't know it was illegal. You still
Mhm.
did it. But it's like, but I didn't know. I didn't. They don't care that you didn't know because it's still the fact that that's your civic duty to find out the law of the land that you live in. So it's like if that be the case for laws of the land, why not for preparing for things that could potentially happen to you? And it's like we prepare for things by having car insurance. Car insurance is just in case you get into a car accident and it fixes your vehicle. You have health insurance just in case you get sick, you can go to the doctor and you don't have a big gigantic bill that you have to pay out of pocket. Vision insurance, dental insurance, even life insurance. Why won't you have insurance to protect yourself?
Yeah. Great point. And I guess on that, how can people find out more about what it is that you're doing, what it is that you may have coming out, and just kind of being able to check out some of the stories and information you put out?
So I have a couple of different places. On Instagram, it's called My Life Prepared. It looks like a little cartoon version of me with the afro. Um, so there's that. I just started a TikTok yet again, My Life Prepared. I'll text you how everything looks because on Twitter it's BLK Prepper because I started off as like the Black Prepper because I was looking at prepping videos and I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me, let alone a female prepper. So I was like, let me do BLK Prepper. And then I also have a group on Facebook called Partying with the Black Prepper because I try to make it light and fun, just information and not necessarily all gloom and doom.
Yeah, yeah,
Those are the different places that you can find me. And like I said, I'll send that to you so you can put in the show notes.
yeah. I love it. I didn't want to cut the conversation short. I just wanted to make sure I got that in there because somebody would be like, "What? Where can I find you?" It's like obviously you can Google her name and it'll come up, but it's like those things will help you kind of like just get that information because I think it's key. And even like you talk about having a go bag, like after I had the thing with my car having the flat tire, like we had a first aid class on our site and I was like, wow, it's been a minute since I've had a first aid class and kind of realizing like, okay, like if something happens, here are the things you should know. And it just kind of making me more aware of like, okay, if I come to work and I'm supposed to be in a leadership role, I don't need to go and do CPR to somebody at the drop of a hat. It's like there are things that you should look at before, like just observing people day to day and just checking in with them before it gets to like that crucial thing. And like I got one of those kind of starter kit bags at Walmart and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have this. But then something I learned from the first aid class was like it's no good for you to have those tools if you never practice using them. And there are like three things that he said that you mainly need. You need like the gauze, you need the triangular badge, and forget what the third thing is. It helps to have gloves too that actually fit. And that was one of the things that I checked in there. I was like, these gloves don't fit me. They're like a small or a medium. And I'm like, my hands are like extra large. It ripped and I was
Oh,
like, I need to go just buy a new set of gloves or just have something on hand to just be able to like, okay, do these things work? Of course, for some reason I decided to try the emergency meal thing that was in there, and I was like, "Okay, that's disgusting." But I was like, "Maybe I need to come up with something else," but now you kinda remind me that, like, I do need to keep track of a few things, but even, like, using the Ziploc bag for the essentials, I do that with some of my electronics, just put
Mhm.
them, like, in a little, headphone case that I think these or another pair came in, and I would put them in there, but I would put it in a Ziploc bag and then put it in there, that way it's like it's just one
Yeah.
thing ready to go.
See,
But
these are
yeah.
important things that, people need to remember, because like I have a get out bag, but then I started to build a bag in my vehicle. And that's because one time I remember that I needed a tow truck for something. I can't remember what it was, but they said the next tow will be an hour wait. And then there was another time, because I called multiple ones, because the first one said it would be a 6 hour wait. Imagine yourself sitting in your vehicle for 6 hours. You have to go
It's
to the
gonna be rough.
bathroom, so
Mhm.
I made sure that I have like a change of clothes in there. I usually keep a case of water in there. I have like granola bars that I would eat, ones that I know taste good,
Right.
you know, certain things like that. But with those like emergency kits, I do try them. I try the smaller versions, like the emergency food packs and stuff, and I will try to eat them and see if like, okay, if I had like this boiled water or something like that and put this together, would I enjoy it? And I buy the smaller packs because I'd rather buy a small pack and find out I don't enjoy it than buy the big case of it and then find out I don't enjoy it. So that's another thing to think about. But if people do things the way that I'm going to start suggesting people to do it and doing it little by little, like day by day, they won't even have to buy that emergency food kit stuff, because they'll have the actual food that they like and have that set aside and won't have to worry about like, oh, but this type of granola bar and this. Yes, you can. Like I said, for the people who have more money than
Mhm.
time, have at it. But if you have more time and not as much money, you want to really make sure that you're putting your dollar to good use. And like I said, most of my people that I target are people who want to make sure that every dollar counts when it comes
Mhm.
down to preparing for things. Like there's this one lady and she was like, "Oh, I have 6 kids," and I was like, "Oh, okay." And she's like, "And I'm a single parent." I said, "Okay." She's like, "Yeah. How do you think that I can start preparing?" Come to find out, she does a lot of bulk buying. So she does a lot of Costco trips and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
I said, "How many of your children actually drive?" She has 2 children that actually drives, and their dad helped them get a car. So I was like, make sure they have snacks and stuff like that in their car. Make sure their dad or you teaches them how to change a tire. Make sure that they also, when they're leaving the store, that they always already have their keys in their hand. So in an emergency, if they need to hurry up and unlock their door, if they don't have the, unlock button, that they can just do that. Make sure you also, before you drive, you look in your back seat to see if somebody's in there. Like there's a lot of little things that
Yeah.
that you don't necessarily think of all the time. But
Mhm.
when I'm talking to my vehicle, I look in the back seat. I look in the trunk before I even get in the car.
Right,
But
right.
that's also because I lived in New York.
Yeah. You gotta be
Well,
on your toes in New York. You can't just be like, "Oh, just sitting here, just dancing in the lilies and just, oh, everything's good, just frolicking."
and the thing is, people were like, "But you moved when you were 5, so you really don't understand." I moved when I was 5. That doesn't mean I don't have family that's still there and me going back and forth and visiting all the time.
Right.
And the thing with that is, people are like, "You sound different when you're with your family." I kind of, the vernacular kind of changes. That's kind of just like, personally speaking, when people go with their family and they speak a different language, their accent, you may hear their accent a little bit more rather than if they're only talking to you.
Right, right. A little bit of
Kind of
code switching maybe.
right. I mean, my minor was radio and television broadcasting, so I had to take speech and diction class. So sometimes you just don't hear it when I'm speaking live, but when I consider it, like when I'm upset, sad or something, I hear it, kind of hear it. So,
It'll come out a little bit.
mhm, mhm,
I
and it's
love
like,
that. It's funny when you mentioned the go bag. I was like, just even starting with my gym bag and having a change of clothes for the gym, or like at work having snacks or extra bars there, it keeps me from going and like getting a candy bar, or like there's a Dollar General store around the block. So it's like I went there last week and I got some like of those small granola. There's like the cereal bars, there's like the Nature Valley, and
mhm,
after a while, like, I didn't wanna get so many. I was eating a lot of trail mix, but after a while, I was like, "I feel like I'm turning into trail mix," and and, like, you know what that does to your gut, so I'm like, "Okay, I'm balancing it." Before our talk, I went to Walmart, and I was getting, like, I got some salads, I got some fruit, but then I got, like, a thing of 5 candy bars. I was like, I'm not gonna fool myself, like, I want to
right,
balance. Like, I want to have it so that I don't rush out and then I'm shopping hungry, or like I don't want to be craving sugar. So it's like I'm cutting back all these things, like gonna cook with the melon and different things like that. Like I'm shopping for produce because I I'm not able to plant anything. Well, maybe I shouldn't say I'm not able to. I didn't ask and I haven't thought about it, but now you've kind of put it in my head. I'm like, hey, if there's a will, there's a way. Just ask the question, and like some of the herbs that you mentioned, I'm sure I can grow those in a pot or just with water, not even needing to go and like dig out the yard and do all this and do that. I could probably do it in the fireplace. It's got this like nice little circular thing that I hadn't been using for anything.
because honestly, some of mine that I started, they're sitting in mason jars.
Mm,
They're just, they're in, and then the thing is, like, you also don't have to necessarily buy, like, canning mason jars, like a certain type of mason jar.
mhm.
You your spaghetti sauce, and it's, oh, you buy your spaghetti sauce, you prefer glass,
Mhm.
so for glass, wash it out, take off
Yeah.
the label, boom, your planter.
Yeah.
Like, and that's if you're doing only water.
Mhm.
So then, because for the soil ones, you have to have drainage, so then they're actually not
Mm.
drowning. But
Right.
with
Right.
the earth, you don't need that. So, I mean, it doesn't have to look fancy,
Right. You
but
just reminded me of this guy. He's come up with this planter where it's like it has built-in irrigation and it's supposed to use like the fungus to um grow the plants. It's called torpedo pod. Have you ever heard of that?
mm-mm.
So basically like the pots that he has, they made it to where you feed the water into the side of it, but then they've got like a spigot kind of running in on the inside. So like you could put your you put your soil in there. He basically walks you through it with a lot of his videos and things like that. But it's cool seeing people like you on one hand prepping, but also he's prepping and in a sense of like, okay, here's another way of thinking about how you do this, to where it's not always the impossible of like, I don't have this. It's like, okay, well, here's what you can get. And kind of
Mm-hmm.
going back to that money and time thing, you can trade this for that. And even at the times where it's like, I don't have the time. I remember a friend checked me. It's like, how much time do you spend on social media? Okay,
It's
how about we
you
give
didn't
you
make
1
it.
hour a week, if not 1 hour a day? And it's like the time kinda shows up a little bit, and it's like, if you have the time or if you enjoy what it is that you're doing, you gotta be honest about what it is that you really want and what it is that you don't want. And then it's like, you don't always have to be in go mode, and this was one of the last questions I was gonna ask you is, um, what do you do in your downtime when it's like, okay, you've built up what you've built up for a while, and you're pretty comfortable, like, you've got a pallet of water, you know how to start a fire, you've got the go bag ready to go, like, what do you do when you're not planning and you're not prepping?
I would say, if it's still pertaining to the planning and prepping part, it would be trying to execute it. So it would be like, hey, everyone in the house, this weekend we're going to do a no electricity drill. And like I said, just for a weekend or just for a day, you know. And then that way you can see, okay, what you are falling off of. But if you mean just like my free time when me not doing anything pertaining to prepping,
Yeah.
um, I take my dog out for a walk. We go out for walks. I do this thing called diamond dots. It's kind of like my way of what I call vegging out, where I'm not really doing anything. It's kind of like a paint by number, but with like little gems,
Mm.
little rhinestones. And I'll show you a picture of one like later. So it's kind of just like, you know how paint by numbers, it's like, okay, green is 4. So, put all the 4s where the 4 is. Same
Mhm.
thing, just with tiny, tiny little rhinestones and just kind of put them in there. And while I'm doing that, I'm watching like something on Disney Plus or,
Huh.
some. So.
That It's kind of cool. I might try and pick up something like that. This has been the closest thing to a hobby that I've been able to do, or just something outside of work where it's not you're constantly thinking and planning and just like processing. It's like your brain will wear you out. It's like you can do a workout physically, or you can like maybe do some breathing exercises or work outside in the lawn. But if you're sitting there constantly, just your mind's going, it's like you
And
gotta
that's,
veg out at some point,
yeah.
just like just 1 hour or 30 minutes or 10 minutes
Hmm.
or just 1 minute where you can just sit back and be like,
Yeah.
"All right, we got this." But last question I've g oh, did you have something?
Oh, no, you were like
Uh,
skipping it. So I was
oh,
hearing
I was
later.
I'm trying to make sure that the internet's going, but, we'll see what it comes out like on the other side. But, one last question I've got for you is from the first question I asked you. Are you still who you said you were?
I would say yes. And that's because of how I explained everything. But with that, yes, I feel like at this moment in time of my life, I'm more of one thing than the other. Like, for caregiving, I'm kind of a caregiver, I feel like on and off, because now she's at a point where she's very self sufficient now. But there's still times where she'll have doctor visits or a certain thing that's considered an emergency where I have to really hurry up and snap into caretaker mode. So that's kind of not as extreme as it was right after she had her double lung transplant. Um, the rapping and the modeling thing, with that's kind of, I would say, on and off, and that's on and off because it depends on when a gig comes up or when I want to audition for something, or if I'm in a mood where I hear an instrumental and I'm like, "Ooh, I can write to this." Sometimes I'd have to be in that frame or in that mood or in that zone for it. While with preparing, I feel like that's an ongoing thing, and I feel like it's an ongoing thing more for me because it's not just for me, but it's also for other people too. Like the fact that I'm not just helping myself, but there's somebody out there who needs to hear what I have to say and it
Right.
can help too. It kind of makes me want to keep going because it's like there were times where I didn't know what I know now. And it's just because of I didn't look for it or I wasn't in the situation where I had to learn it. But it's like there's somebody out there that could possibly be in this situation soon. And if they don't see me, they won't know. So that's almost kind of like my fault because I was supposed to be out there and tell them. Maybe I don't know how to reach them. Maybe they'll find me. Maybe I'll find them. But it's the fact that I at least told my story and went out there and showed different things that I did, what I'm going to do, and what I'm still doing now in order to help them to avoid certain things that I went through.
Man, I love it. That's a beautiful progression.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for sharing your life, your insights, and just where you're at right now, and just kind of what you continue allowing yourself to work through and share with people.
of course. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this.
You're very welcome.